welcome back, and now we will be looking into not just the acts of terrorism or talking about terrorism in general, but the ideology behind it. We will be trying to look in depth about the psychology of a terrorist, what compels or drives a person to become an extremist or a terrorist, and we will look at it from a strategy and a human resources perspective. And joining me right now is Dr. Sharif Lotfi, and he's Professor of Strategy and Human Resources. Good afternoon, Doctor.
Good afternoon. Hi. How are you?
Dr. Sharif, terrorism is an act or an action against all odds. It depends on killing. And it's really something that is vicious and against humanity.
Sure.
How come these groups attract the normal people, and a normal people suddenly transferred from a normal person to an abnormal person, and he becomes suddenly a terrorist? So
thanks for the question, actually, because it's a very important question to tackle. Usually people have needs, okay? And as we all say in the behavioral sciences, Maslow hierarchy of needs, that starts with the basic needs and goes to security, sense of belonging, and self-esteem up to the self-actualization. But people in search for identity, for a meaning for their lives, for adventure, for answers for their questions. So if these needs are not fulfilled, or their answers are not really have a convenient answers, they go try to find it somewhere. So if some people have some answers or fulfilling their needs, so actually they can easily receive these people and trying to inject their extremism ideology into them in order to fulfill that this will be closer to God, this will be serving the religion, this will be serving a cause or high cause for them. So they can be easily attracted for this direction or from this direction.
Now, Doctor, what are the cultural aspects that drives an individual to become an extremist or a terrorist?
Okay, let's start by saying that we are all abide by values. Values on several levels. Values on individual levels, it's how we brought up at our home, and even values on our corporate or organizations, and values even on the nation or the country levels. So even when we do consulting to corporates and organizations and try to build or influence their culture, we need to put or set some values. Values like integrity, values like credibility, like honesty. And then we try to inject these concepts in the existing stuff. And one of the roles of the HR is to validate that the newcomers have these values also. And even on the nation's level, we have what we call hierarchy of values. You probably have hierarchy of values that is different than me. And the same thing for Dina. You remember Bill Clinton case with Monica? When he was accused, he was not accused by having an private affair. Okay, he was accused by lying under oath. So as a politician in the States, this could be a shame that you are lying under oath rather than having an internal affair. This is different than in other countries. As a politician, it's not accepted to have an internal affair or a private affair, but lying could be much more tolerating. Yes, thank you for giving me the word. So that doesn't mean that they are good or we are bad. This means that they are different hierarchy of values. And this is what we really need to do, that we need to respect these values, and people need to respect our values. And then when these values are being injected in our culture, things are going much better after that. Don't get me wrong. People are not angels in other countries, nor they are living in utopia.
But they're moving in a system.
Thank you very much. They are moving in a system, in order. They are respecting the law. And even if you are not in love with the law, because most of the people are not, okay, they fear of the law. They fear of consequences of that. And regarding your question, actually, Rasha, we need actually to, values may be not very much abiding to us, but law will be. So we need to have a system and order as well.
Education is the answer for any community in order to be a rightful community. But what's weird that when we were discussing the topic of terrorism, we found that not only the poor people are attracted to terrorism, but also we found that rich people are being also parts of these groups. So I didn't have an answer to this question. Why a rich person who is very well educated and knows what's right and what's wrong, and he should be a normal person, suddenly become a terrorist?
Yes, you mentioned two very important keywords, actually. One of them is being rich, and the other keyword is education. Okay? He can be, or someone can be rich, that's normal, but not very well much educated. Because sometimes, I don't want to be harsh, but our education system is not really built on debating, discussing, and understanding the other opinions. They are built on memorizing, and on lots of cases not to discuss. It's just as it comes in the curriculum, and you have to go with it. Okay? And then, if you are less educated and less fortunate about knowing the concepts and tools, how to debate and how to think, okay, you will be easily attracted by another one that he is much more educated. And this is very important then to influence the attitude of the people. People think that attitude is merely a behavior. Actually, attitude is three components. One of them is intellectual, that how people think, and the other one is affective, how people feel towards something, and the third concept, or the third component is the behavior. So actually, if you want really to influence someone, you need to go with how he thinks or how he feels. So if I go and tell him that you are going to be closer to a cause, or getting into another higher value, then he can be easily attracted to this. He still can be rich, but have some insecurities, or having unfulfilled need, so which can be much more influencing than the status he is in. And that's why you may see even some famous people can be easily attracted to the extremism ideology. And this is the point. Keyword is education. And we need to start this from the childhood, in the schools, in mosques, in churches, in clubs, and even in our homes, actually.
Is it just education, or even making a creation of an independent individual who can think for himself? Because sometimes what we do, which is part of our culture, is you respect the elderly. So whatever an elderly person will tell you has to be correct. You cannot discuss or negotiate or even contradict. Whatever a sheikh or a priest would tell you, then that has to be the proper thing, because these are men of God. So do you feel that actually, in addition to education, we need to make people think for themselves?
This is a very critical question, actually. You remember me with the movie of Adil Imam of Irhabi, when his sheikh told him, don't discuss or don't debate. And this is a really very critical statement. Because yes, we need to debate. We need to be educated in order to debate, to discuss, even in religion, in science. And there is nothing to be perceived like it's as it is. And when people tell you, even a sheikh or a religious person, he usually communicates with you as God says that. He doesn't communicate with you, this is my understanding for a verse, or this is my understanding for a certain statement. Okay? So there is a big difference between this is what I understand from the verse, and God says that. God says that. You cannot really debate on that. But on his understanding, there are lots of debating. On his interpretation, there is lots of things that can go back and forth. So there is no shame to talk about things. to debate, to be convinced by that. Sometimes people don't have answers. Okay. Even scientists, some religious persons, they don't have answers. And the thing is to trace answers, to go with research about the answers. It's not to take it as it is. There is no shame to discuss with elder people. There is no shame to discuss with doctors, with scientists, as long as in a frame of understanding and getting into the truth and seeking the value of things and the depth of subjects. There is no shame of that. Why not?
Sir, if you were asked for help to put a strategy to fight terrorism, what are the main points that you are going to underline for fighting this phenomenon?
One of the very basic things is education. No country can kill the extremism ideology or the killing thinking that some people go for it unless we invest on education. Yesterday, I heard from the news that Theresa May, the Prime Minister of UK, she increased the budget for education in London. So in order to influence the concepts of students and children from the childhood. Okay. So if London goes in this direction, so we need to go in that direction too. So education is very much important. And one of other things, we need to observe the speeches, the hate speeches that may come from many sources, media or some religious persons, or some who call themselves religious person. We need to be very close about that. And frankly speaking, there are some initiatives in these directions. Okay, we need them to be completed and continued, so the children from their childhood can be at least influenced and not to be a victim for extremist ideologies.
Dr. Lotfi, do you feel that the social media and all these scenes of violence, as well as even sometimes the harsh discourse or posts that those who are against certain governments or even certain groups showing towards each other actually does not help, and it's actually increasing terrorist ideas and increasing violence in this globally, not just in our society?
That's very important, Rasha, actually. And this is sometimes we inherited even when we were young. You know, even in a play or a game that children play for a basketball or football or even chess game, in order to be a winner, there must be a loser. So there is no shame of being a winner or a loser. Who wins today will lose tomorrow, and we are going into the same circle. The point is, we are not raised up on accepting the other values and the other concepts. In order for my religion to be right, then your religion must be wrong. In order my concepts and principles must be right, so yours must be wrong. So this is very important, that we need to accept. Accept does not mean approve, by the way. Accept means that I'm giving you the right to tell a different concept or a different opinion. Okay? And definitely the social media, by this way that we are observing and we are studying, yes, sometimes increase the violence and increase the harsh of discussions, actually.
Now, are you pro or against the idea of censorship of the social media, especially in terms of spreading violent thoughts or extremist thoughts?
We cannot reinvent the wheel, and we cannot be a part of the world. Social media is a fact that we need to deal with. And definitely it's one way that people can express their thoughts and ideas. Okay. Actually, we need to have some groups, and started to be existed, to make some kind of a balance, okay? Without insulting, without harsh words. You can debate, you can say your opinion, you can discuss within a framework of good intentions, okay? And then we started some groups to do that actually. And within our friends and our groups, we started that when someone is trying to be extremist in his thoughts or started to say harsh words, we started to say, hey, look, you are not going into that direction. And personally, I am usually placing posts in order to decrease the hate speeches and the harsh talking between people.
Dr. Sharif, expressing oneself is very important, and at least psychologically, he can find a space to express his feelings and his sadness and anger. Dr. Sharif Lutfi, Professor of Strategy and Human Resources expert, thank you very much for joining us, and welcome once again to Nile Cruise.
Thank you for you. It was a pleasure. Thank you for you.
And now we're moving to a quick break, so please stay tuned.